For those of you who watched the last video that was made, which was about building a vehicle of growth and self-discovery, this might be an interesting addition to that, or supplement to that for you. Because at one point I talked about the decision is actually a question of what someone wants. And then there's a decision that has to be made if it's going to be pursued. Now, let me just say this. Sometimes we think that life, all of life, can be like a tree. A tree has a set system. The seed goes in the ground. If it's in good soil and gets the necessary nourishment of water and sunlight, depending on the kind of tree, it'll need different variations of those things. It's going to go through a natural process that's robotic and natural for it. Of course, different environments will bring about different kinds of healthy or unhealthy growth in the tree. You might have a long life, it might not have a long life, depending on its environment. Now, a person is similar. Depending on the environment in which it is growing, certain influences can be very healthy and some detrimental. And this will affect the direction that one's growth takes. Now, let's say a person has an idea, they want a specific type of career in music. We're using music because that's why a lot of you are watching the blog. Let's say you want to be a trombonist in a orchestra. So you set yourself on a particular course of development. And you study with someone that you respect. And you listen to what they have to say. And you take it up and you work with it and you practice it and you start to develop the skills and strengths necessary to be able to start to put yourself in the workforce, or at least to be able to audition to be a part of that workforce. And because the competition is getting greater and greater, you have to make the choice of whether you want to continue down that road. And so one can see even from that, because let's say you think you've gotten to a certain level of accomplishment, and you go to some of these auditions, and you can't make it through that first gate, which can be a narrow gate, where everyone is really hypersensitive to listening to the machine. You know, can it make those donuts the same way or pretty close to it each time? We're looking for accuracy, consistency, a strong basic foundation with all the foundational elements. Rhythm, pitch, timbre, happening at a strong basic level, knowledge of the literature, basic style and dynamic contrasts. And more importantly, how reliable is this key on the big orchestral keyboard going to be when the conductor presses it and expects a certain result? So, if one doesn't make it through that gate, then one has to go, okay, how strong is my desire to get through that gate? If the desire is really, really strong, then the person obviously will have to buck up again and start working on what did not get them through that gate. That is a choice. So let's say the person really keeps it up and keeps it up and gets through that gate, gets to a second round, gets to a section round, and because of all their hard work, maybe after taking several auditions, they get the job. Now, because they want to do the best they can on the job, they figure out a system, a routine that's going to keep them in good maintenance order. And that maintenance order and that balance is different for different people. And so they get to the point where they're doing very well in playing that job, showing up, being responsible, accurate, and consistent. And they get good at it. And they start to get comfortable with it, a little more confident. And maybe if the desire is strong enough, they start to try different things, try to express it a little bit fuller, take chances with certain shapes of the phrases, maybe start to play a little bit softer when it's marked actually 6 pianos, maybe start to expand the dynamic contrast, maybe try different equipment for different types of literature, because they want to. Again, all of that is a choice. If someone has the desire to keep growing, and they pursue that, then they will have a certain development. And sometimes that development will just take it to keep refining their place within that spectrum of music that they've decided to have as their career. That's fine. That's excellent. That is what it is. To think that greater and greater growth beyond that will happen isn't necessarily so. Again, choice comes through. And depending on what a person is influenced by at the core of themselves, that will oftentimes direct a person in a particular direction. With me, within a month of being in a great job that I was in, I knew that it was not everything for me. I knew I needed other things, and those other things were not music. And music took me to the point, and getting a certain job very, very young got me to the point of thinking, wow, this can't be all that there is in life. There needs to be more. And it took me on a deep inner journey, which I'm still on and will always be on, because it's infinite. And then I realized, right, my art can reflect that. And that was a choice, to try to have my art reflect that. Now, because of that, I'm obviously not concerned about whether I'm going to fit through anybody's gate of acceptance. And that's a choice. And that's where the bravery to be oneself is paramount. And if there's a certain inner conviction and a certain inner strength and a certain inner drive that's propelling you and motivating you in a certain direction, and it keeps going, and wow, you find yourself, coming up against all sorts of terrain that you never thought of existed, and you have to adjust your craft. And then you can think, do I want to keep going there? And that's the decision. It's the question and the decision. And mine is, yes, I do. And I'll discover more along the way. So here's a little bit in case it helps.